Paul McCartney spent years hiding his real feelings about one woman. She walked into Beatles recording sessions in 1968 and ruined everything. She used their instruments without asking. She broke their sacred Geisenly rule. The other Beatles hated having her there too. Paul felt pushed to the side as his best friend chose her over the band. In 2023, he finally told the uncomfortable truth. This woman didn't just break up the Beatles. She broke Paul's heart in ways no one understood. Paul McCartney was born on June 18, 1942. Right in the middle of World War II, Liverpool was being bombed all the time by German planes, and families like his had to hide underground almost every night. His father, Jim, worked selling cotton, while his mother, Mary, was a nurse at Walton Hospital, the same place where Paul was born. The family lived dangerously close to the docks, which were always being attacked. When Paul was born, his father joked that he looked terrible, like a piece of red meat with one eye open, crying nonstop. That tough beginning during a time of bombs and darkness shaped how Paul would see the world. When Paul was just 5 years old, he had already learned to fight. He remembered hitting a boy with a metal bar and getting in trouble in front of the whole school. He needed that toughness later, especially after passing a big test which got him into the Liverpool Institute. But his success didn't make life easier because his mother was Catholic and his father was Protestant. He became a target. The other boys, mostly from Protestant families, bullied him badly. Every day at school felt like a battle, and Paul learned to protect himself. These early struggles stayed with him and would later show up in songs that talked about surviving and staying strong. Paul's hardest moment came in 1956. On October 31st, his mother died from breast cancer. She was only 47. Paul was just 14 and couldn't believe it. She had kept the sickness a secret, and after surgery, she died from a blood clot. Paul's first thought was heartbreaking. He asked what they would do without her money. Mary had been the main moneymaker. His last memory of her was teasing her for how she said the word ask. That guilt never left him. Just a few months later, he wrote his first song, I Lost My Little Girl. As a way to deal with his sadness, that loss would stay deep inside him. And years later, when he dreamed of her telling him everything would be okay, it inspired one of his most famous songs, Let It Be. Paul's father, Jim, was more than a salesman. He was a talented musician who played piano and trumpet. He had worked at the Hippodrome Theatre in Liverpool and learned music just by listening every night while running the spotlights. In 1957, Jim gave Paul a trumpet, hoping he'd follow in his footsteps. But Paul soon realized he couldn't sing and play trumpet at the same time. So he traded it for a guitar that cost $15. That simple choice completely changed music history. The guitar gave Paul a way to sing and create songs at the same time. His father's love for old music deeply influenced Paul's style, especially his love for strong melodies and catchy tunes. Even with school and music, Paul still had to work. In 1958, at age 16, he took on tough jobs just to help the family. He delivered coal during freezing mornings and swept floors at a cotton mill, where the machines were so loud you couldn't hear yourself think. His grandfather had spent his life cutting tobacco at Copp's warehouse, and his father had worked in Liverpool's cotton exchange. These experiences taught Paul about working people, their pain, pride, and humor. It was this world that shaped many of the Beatles songs that honored everyday life. When Paul was 10 years old in 1952, something scary happened. He almost drowned while swimming with friends in one of Liverpool's flooded quarries. These deep pits looked fun, but were deadly. Filled with freezing water and leftover mining equipment, they were traps for children. Paul slipped under and his friends had to pull him out. Many kids had died in those waters. That scare left him with a fear of swimming that stayed for life, and maybe even a stronger sense of how fragile life could be. Then came the day that changed everything. On July 6, 1957, Paul went to a church fair at St. Peter's in Woolton. It was hot and sunny. He watched a boy named John Lennon play guitar, using strange chords he'd learned from his mom. Paul, who was left-handed, flipped John's guitar upside down and played 20 Flight Rock perfectly, singing every word. He also sang Long Tall Sally like a pro. The band couldn't believe it. He could play, sing, tune guitars, and knew all the hits. That moment was the beginning of a partnership that would shake the world. 2 weeks later, Pete Shotton saw Paul riding his bike and casually invited him to join John's band, the Quarrymen. Paul said he would after scout camp and a family holiday in Butlins. His first real gig with the group came on October 18, 1957. Everyone wore matching jackets. They paid for them slowly, bit by bit. What made this even more emotional was that John's mother, Julia, had died just 3 months earlier. Paul understood that pain. He had lost his own mother the year before. That shared sadness brought them closer, and their music would carry the emotions they couldn't say out loud by 1959. Paul and John were skipping school to write songs in Paul's bedroom at 20 Forthland Road. They sat face to face, writing and recording ideas using a cheap tape recorder. Their first song together was Too Bad About Sorrows. Then came Just Fun and an instrumental called Looking Glass. They treated songwriting like work, building a notebook filled with over 100 songs long before they were famous. This was the foundation of their future success, but not everything went smoothly. On that same first Quarrymen performance in October 1957, Paul had one job: play a solo on guitar boogie. He had practiced it again and again, but when the moment came, nerves got the better of him. He froze, stumbled through the song, and felt completely embarrassed. He nearly quit music altogether, but instead of giving up, he decided he wasn't cut out to be a lead guitarist. That failure made him realize they needed someone better, which led to George Harrison joining in early 1958. That change would shape the band forever. In May 1960, Paul took on a stage name during a crazy tour in Scotland. For 8 days, the band played behind singer Johnny Gentle. Paul called himself Paul Ramone, trying to sound fancy. They traveled in a cramped van, stayed in sketchy places, and weren't even listed on the posters. The tour was a disaster, but Paul remembered Scottish girls asking if that was his real name. Despite the mess, it gave him a taste of the road life. Then came Hamburg. On August 17, 1960, the Beatles began playing at the Indra Club in Germany's red light district. They performed for hours every night, 4.5 hours on weekdays and 6 hours on Saturdays. The place was full of strip clubs and rough crowds. They earned just a few marks each, barely enough for food. But this grind made them better. Club owners would shout at them to put on a show, and they did. John would act wild on stage, and they started developing a real performance style. George later said that Hamburg is where they truly became a band. During their time in Hamburg, Paul made a big decision. When Stuart Sutcliffe left the group in 1961, they needed a new bass player. Paul didn't want the role, but he took it anyway. He bought a Hofner violin bass from a local music shop. That bass became iconic. He used it on the band's early albums and singles like She Loves You. His melodic bass playing changed how people saw the bass guitar. It wasn't just background anymore, it became part of the song's heart. Everything shifted when they met Brian Epstein. On November 9, 1961, he saw them play at the Cavern Club and immediately thought they had something special. Just a few weeks later, on December 3rd, he offered to manage them. He had no experience, but his style and confidence impressed them. Their parents liked him, too, and soon he was guiding the group towards something much bigger. The biggest controversy hit in August 1962. John invited Ringo Starr to join the band. Just 2 days later, Pete Best was out. Fans were furious. Some protested outside Pete's house, and George even got punched by an angry supporter at Ringo's first recording session. The producer didn't trust him and used a session drummer instead. Ringo thought he might be kicked out too, but in the end, the new lineup clicked and it changed everything. Their first single, Love Me Do, came out on October 5, 1962. It didn't top the charts right away, but reached number 17 in the UK by November. Paul sang harmony and played bass, while John handled the harmonica. They recorded 3 versions with different drummers. When the song finally came to the US in 1964, it hit number 1. That was their 4th US number 1 hit in the same year, breaking records and launching them to global fame. It all began on February 9, 1964, when 4 young men from Liverpool stepped onto the Ed Sullivan show stage and changed the world. That night, 73 million people were glued to their screens, setting a record that held for 3 years. CBS was flooded with 50,000 ticket requests, even though the theater only had room for 728 people. The moment became more iconic than Elvis's debut in 1957, which had just 7,000 requests. During one song, as the camera moved across the band members, John's caption cheekily read, "Sorry girls, he's married." Backstage, Olympic skater Terry McDermott pretended to snip off Paul's hair while everyone burst into laughter. They opened with All My Loving. Then Paul sang till there was you, followed by She Loves You, and later returned, For I Saw Her Standing There, and I Want to Hold Your Hand. It all happened just 77 days after Presid.